Good afternoon. I want to welcome you all who are on the call today to Name Philadelphia and Name Florida presents the Bounce Back series, a continuation of an ongoing series that we've had going on for pretty much since the pandemic has began. I want to welcome you guys back in. Today, we're going to be talking about shifting the employee mindset. We have a really great, robust conversation for you. We have two industry leaders here. And I'll allow my moderator to introduce them properly. But first, let me level set where we are. We do have a chat. Feel free to throw any questions in the chat. There will be a brief Q&A at the end of the event. If you have any questions or want to reach out to us, please feel free to engage that way. I want to thank you again. Please, if you are not, please follow Naming Philadelphia and Naming Florida on social media, whether that is Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook for some of my old heads. Please make sure you engage with us because that's how we understand that these events have value, and we want to make sure that we're bringing you content that's relevant. So with no further ado, let me introduce to you our moderator, Miss Monique Manners. She's the Senior Manager of MVPD Operations and Strategy for Comcast Technology and Solutions. She's an accomplished business and technology leader supported by over 20 years of quantifiable achievements driving business transformation from clients in program, project management, service delivery, assurance, digital excellence, engineering, operations, and organizational development. I mean, the woman's a rock star. What more can I say? And I have the pleasure of working with her as she is also the president of the the now name it Florida chapter because we wanted the whole state. We wanted to reclaim it from Miami up. And Monique is leading that charge. She's also a certified Six Sigma Black Belt. She's also responsible for operational readiness and care strategy for business partners, including our very own Sky, Charter, Cox, and in Canada, Roger Shaw and Videotron. She is truly a rock star, and it's my great pleasure to introduce my fellow president to you guys. Monique, why don't you come on screen and introduce yourself to our audience?
Hey, Dwayne, thank you so much for that introduction. This program is the first collaboration between NAMIC Philadelphia and Florida, so I welcome the partnership. It's been a great effort over the last couple of months to pull this together for you. Today, I'm accompanied by two gentlemen whose reputations precede them in the industry. They are dynamic NAMIC members and staunch advocates for all communities and demographics. Today, we're here to talk about the Great Reshuffle, or the Great Resignation, AKA the Great Resignation, as some of you may know it. And we're just talking about the shifting employee mindset, right? What do businesses have to do differently to attract and retain employees? With that said, I'm going to throw my first question to Ari. Ari is the VP, Vice President of Talent, Management and Acquisition, DEI&B at Comcast Corporation. He currently serves as in the Central Division. In his role, he's responsible for the development and execution of external recruitment strategy and operations, internal talent management, including talent mobility, employee development programs, program and performance management, ERGs, and other elements to include university relationships. Ari joined Comcast in 2014. Prior to that, he's held various leadership roles in the telecommunications industry. He's an alum of the Florida Atlantic University, where he is also on the board of directors. He is currently completing an MBA with a concentration in organizational leadership at Barry University in Miami Shores. He is a certified Six Sigma Green Belt and also serves on the board and council for the Emma Bowen Foundation. He resides in Boca, Florida with his wife, Jessica, and two kids or children, Brenna, 7, and Bronx, 2. If you catch the reference there, you'll figure out that Ari is a Yankees fan. And since I'm a native New Yorker, go Yankees. So thank you, Ari, for joining us. As we get started today, I wanted to mention that, let's just talk some figures. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, nearly 4.4 million Americans have quit their jobs in February. As we delve into today's discussion around the Great Reshuffle, my first question is for you. What are the top 3 reasons people are quitting their jobs?
Wendy, thanks again for having me. Certainly something that we're paying a lot of attention to and looking at a lot of the data on. And what we've seen is really there's 4 main reasons that people are noting as reasons for leaving their or vacating their positions and leaving their companies. The first being pay and compensation. Certainly what we've seen is that the employment market right now is driving enhanced compensation levels, very aggressive offers from companies in bringing on new talent, and that has certainly put people in a position to potentially leave due to the pay and compensation that they have. Secondly, lack of feeling valued or belonging, and I think that plays into a lot of what I do at Comcast, which is really focused on our talent development strategies. So what are we doing development-wise for our employees? What are we providing them from a development perspective? How are we ensuring that they feel valued beyond just the focus of their current role, and that we see a future for them at the organization? And then belonging, really making sure that we've got an inclusive culture, making sure that we're looking at every piece of our environment to ensure that it promotes belonging to all of our employees. And then the last 2, poor work-life balance and burnout, and a lack of career development opportunities. So certainly, the work-life balance and burnout, it's been a long couple of years for people. They've gone through a lot. They've certainly been working a lot, and I think especially in these remote environments, it's been more difficult for people to sort of manage that work-life balance and find that area of separation for themselves. And people have struggled with that. So we've seen that pop up as a reason that people are leaving their roles. And the career development opportunities, as I discussed before, are such a critical component of our talent management strategy to ensure that we're not only focused on the performance of individuals in their job today, but really looking at where we have opportunity to continue developing them and to provide them opportunities to gain exposure to different elements of our organization, to develop their skill sets, and to put themselves in a position to advance their careers here. Quentin, any other thoughts on that?
I think you're spot on, particularly when you talk about the reasons people are leaving organizations. COVID has been quite interesting because it has allowed people to really reassess their lives. And when we look at exit data, to your point, people are leaving for greater compensation. They're leaving for other opportunities, but they're also leaving because they are looking for work that connects with their noble purpose. So it's an interesting time when we look at a number of candidates that we're hiring. It's interesting that some of the first questions they ask is, what is your organization's corporate social responsibility? And what that really suggests to me is that employees are wanting the bridge between what they are personally concerned about to be connected and aligned with the organizations that they work for. So absolutely, you're spot on.
Thank you, Quentin. And to introduce Quentin Soleil, he's the VP of Human Resources at Comcast Beltway Region. Quentin is an accomplished global human resource executive, driving mission-critical results by creating strategic alliances with senior operations leaders and leadership executives to effectively align human resource management to support key business initiatives. He's a columnist, a conference speaker, certified executive coach, and a change maven. Quentin has a Bachelor of Science degree in Psychology and Human Resources from the University of Maryland and a Global MBA from the Fletcher School of Business at Tufts. He's an avid international traveler and foodie, and he loves going off the tourist path and living like a local when he travels. So Quentin, thank you for joining us today.
Well, I'm sorry to intrude on what you were saying. Thank you for the introduction. It was so kind. And thank you for the invitation and to having the opportunity to share this space with Yari as well.
We appreciate both you and Ari joining us today to share your expertise. My next question is for you. Baby boomers have retired early in the last 2 years. Should organizations invest in training for top-down leadership that teaches them to encourage employees and make them authentically feel there's an urgency in the work that they're doing?
So great question. Baby boomers, that generation from 1946, I believe, to 1964. To the tune of, I believe it's 28.6 million baby boomers have exited their organizations over the last year. What is also interesting about that is as that 28.6 has left the workforce, the number of jobs that have opened, it was about 11.2 in 2019. It shifted to 23.4 million in 2020. And for 2022, it's forecasted that another potentially 30 million will exit the workforce as well, for all of the other reasons that Ari and I discussed during that first question. But to hone in on what you've asked, should organizations invest in training for top-down leadership that encourages employees to really position themselves for greater opportunities and to see the connection? You use the word urgency. I like the word connection, to be connected to the work that they're doing. I've been reading a great book by Lisa McLeod, which talks about leading with a noble purpose. And the book is really inspiring, but it's also helped me a lot as I coach executives in our organization relative to the fact that connecting employees to our organization strategy, which is also bridged to their noble purpose, it shifts the mindset where employees feel that they are contributing not just to what the organization's strategic objectives are, but they're also doing work that's connected with their core values. That's a really important piece. And I think all of us are probably have reassessed that or have followed our passion to make certain that our work is aligned with that. But the other part of your question is around making certain that we are developing, we're having a learning organization, which we are very fortunate that Comcast is. We invest a lot of time ensuring that we equip all levels of our organization with the knowledge and the skills and the competencies to perform at the highest levels of excellence. But in order to really align and connect and create that urgency you talked about, it's two things. It's one, the organization doing it, but it is also the individual employee, all of us, taking ownership of our careers. So not just relying on the organization to do it, but making certain that we have reassessed where we want to go with our career, what do we want to do next, and what do we need to do to prepare so that we can sketch out a plan using the resources that the organization affords us, but also taking ownership of that ourselves and charting our own way. Ari, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add to that.
I think you hit on some great points there. To the point made in the question, with baby boomers retiring early over the last couple of years, these are folks that have lived and worked through multiple economic recessions and different political dynamics, and now living through, and working through a pandemic. I think these are individuals that just said, look, I've had enough. I don't need to wait, for the next big thing to come around, and it's time for me to, to move on to the next stage of my life. And to the point Quentin made earlier, for many people, this, pandemic environment has made them really reassess their priorities. And for folks that are at that retirement stage, I think it certainly moved up the timeframes for many of them, just so that they would have more time to focus on those other priority items. When you look at the impact that has on an organization culturally, and you think about many of these, boomers were in high level leadership and executive level leadership positions. And now you see a shift with later generations taking these positions on. And for all the reasons that we spoke about, with later generations having different priorities and putting different criticality and impact on cultural tenets of an organization, diversity, social corporate responsibility, that starts to change the culture as those individuals are moving into more of those executive leadership positions, because that's what's important to them. So it starts to force a change in culture for the organization, to make sure that that's a larger priority holistically. From the top-down training element, you really have to be thinking forward about how you're going to support your business. And the way to do that really is ensuring that you've got that bench, that you've got the succession plans in place, so that as things like this occur and you have these retirements going on, you've got ready now talent internally that you have invested in, that you've developed, that you've been transparent and made aware that they are folks that you see moving to that next stage of their career, so you can retain them, but you have them at a point of readiness, and you've made that investment proactively to be able to quickly pivot and move folks into these roles and maintain business continuity. So I think it's incredibly important that organizations are investing in that top-down leadership development.
Thank you, Ari. Both you and Quentin talked about culture. You talked about investment. Let's talk a little bit about the boomerang effect. How has the Great Reshuffle changed the hiring practices and strategies of organizations?
So two parts there. So I'll start off with, for those who aren't familiar with the term boomerang effect, what that is a dynamic that we've seen over the last couple of years, where folks who are leaving organizations end up boomeranging back to those organizations. So you heard us talk a little bit about it earlier, but to put it in perspective, over the course of 2021, more than 4 million people on average monthly left their jobs. Now, recent studies with those individuals and surveys have shown that about 40% have admitted that they felt better at their prior job, and almost 20% have already returned to their prior company. So what you can see there, again, is that boomerang effect, where 1 out of 5 people who have left ended up already returning back to the company that they left. This provides, from a hiring perspective and hiring strategy perspective, a real opportunity to actively consider and aggressively engage alumni as a candidate pool, especially in a market where it is so difficult to hire, where there are a shortage of available talent. This is a great way to have a different pool that you can aggressively engage and consider, and especially if they're individuals who have shown a propensity for success in your environment, in your work prior. Now, if you look at the shift in hiring practices, I think certainly we've seen a shift that has required efficiency as a key component to any hiring process. The days of multi-layered hiring processes where candidates were willing to wait around for weeks between different stages, those are gone. Efficiency is key, making sure that it is an approach that allows sort of an on-demand, in many cases, dynamic for candidates. So whether that be AI-based video interviewing, or interviewing through technology rather than bringing folks on site, so it's easier to clear schedules and move efficiently. What you see in many frontline spaces is that for high volume frontline early career type roles, companies are moving to assessment-based hiring practices. If you look at companies like Home Depot, for example, advertising that they can turn an offer around to a candidate within 24 hours. Amazon has moved to a 15-minute automated hiring process. So in some of these cases, in their high volume environments, companies have removed that personal interaction. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an advocate for going to a fully virtual or fully digital hiring process that removes any sort of personal component or human component, but certainly what that shows us is an indication that efficiency in hiring processes has to be a key component of your strategy. Flexibility in approach is another important shift that we've seen. Candidates are looking for, different ways that they can interact with an organization. So some have a lot more comfort utilizing digital tools, so interviewing via video and things of that nature. But having a flexible approach where they have an option to interview via video or can come on site for a video, what that does is, again, puts candidates in a position where they can select what they're comfortable with, what the best experience for them is going to be. And as a company, if you want to compete, you've got to be thinking about that experience and how they want to go through a process with you. The other thing I think that we've seen, from a standpoint of market shift is there's a shift in the dynamic here. Where companies used to be the buyers, right? And we were interviewing talent and deciding whether we were going to make a purchase. That dynamic has completely shifted. We are, for anyone that is thinking differently, we are the sellers in this market today. So if you're going into a hiring strategy and hiring process, thinking that a key component doesn't have to be the way that you as an employer are marketing the opportunity that you have, are marketing the cultural tenets of your organization, are really focusing in on some of the key benefits that you can offer, you're going to lose out. So it's an important part of a strategy, and especially to get business leaders and hiring managers, of the mindset that when they sit down with a candidate, they need to be selling during that conversation as much as they're listening and assessing whether someone is the right fit for a role and has the right qualifications. They need to be selling the merits of the organization. They need to be ambassadors of the culture. And then lastly, I think what we've seen is a need to have diversity in offering. And what I mean from that is it's no longer about just selling compensation or just selling, working for a large Fortune 30 organization. You really got to dive deep and think about selling the cultural tenets of the organization in your offering, thinking about creatively what benefits you're offering and where those land from an importance and priority standpoint with your candidate base. So think about things like student loan repayment options and how that lands with the candidate pools that you're looking for. Think about, the different standard benefits and how many of those are important. And, you've even seen companies that now have moved towards sort of an a la carte benefit offering where new employees can actually select from a menu of benefits which ones are important to them versus sort of the standard medical, dental benefits that we're used to providing individuals and having those as a priority. So those are just some of the shifts that we've seen and that we've had to adapt to from a hiring strategy standpoint. Quentin, anything on your end that you're seeing that I didn't touch on?
You've nailed it, but I would add this. Monique, I think you've asked 2 questions by now, and there's already a common thread. And that common thread is really around the employee experience at the organization, the candidate experience that you are trying to attract to the organization, and also the employee that you're trying to retain in the organization. As Ari rightly pointed out, this is really an employee market. When you think about the opportunities, quite differently from times past where people would stay in jobs for years, right? Employees will move and shift organizations to ensure that they are getting what they feel their basic needs from an employee-employer relationship are met. And those things are really centered around what those employees' values are and how the organization is aligned to that. I think you hit some really great points when you talked about the practices and the strategies. There's one that I'm really proud of that we've done even pre-COVID, where we looked at women who needed to leave the workforce or desired to leave the workforce because they wanted to raise their children for a couple of years, take 3 to 4 years off from their careers, and then come back. A couple of years ago, that probably would have been almost an act of Congress to do. But today, we looked at the opportunities of bringing those women back into the workplace and capitalizing on the knowledge and the skills they had, but creating a bridge for them to quickly get caught up onto any new business models and technologies so that they could be successful. In addition to creating a flexible work environment so that they could start work once their child is safely at school, but also pick them up to see them home safely.
Thanks, Quentin. I would like to add on to that piece. We're talking about employees, the reshuffle, and now in this conversation, we're talking about, the shifting of mindset as well. A recent Harvard Business Review piece reported that 30% of people who left their jobs for greener pastures did not have a good outcome. How does this affect the return on investments for corporations as they plan new hire training and their onboarding practices?
Well, before I answer the B clause of your question, let me just address the A clause, which is a statement, and say to anyone that is looking to exit their organizations for whatever your reason, is to make certain that you do your due diligence. Do your research around the company values, the company culture, the company objectives, and how things are done there to make certain that it aligns to what your expectations are in an employee and employer relationship. But as it relates to the HBR article you referenced, I did read that, and it is quite interesting to me that 30%, that's a significant number that's leaving within 90 days. When you look at some of the reasons and you dig a little deeper, 43% of that 30%, they said that the role did not meet their expectations as it had been laid out for them. So, that's a check on the organization to say, how are you explaining and advertising and promoting these roles? Are you giving the clarity and the understanding that people will be coming into? 34% said that there was a specific incident that drove them away, and another 32% they blamed the company culture. Different day where culture, it really matters, and employees have a high expectation of the environments that they'll be working in. I will share that, and this is just in my opinion, but the candidate experience, it really starts from the first touch point. And that first touch point could be going to your company's website and searching for a job. How that is even laid out sends a message about the organization. That first touch point could be with the recruiter, and how that interaction is. All of these pieces, they suggest what the culture of the organization is as it relates to how things are done. Does the organization operate at the highest level of excellence in everything that it does? So the interviewing and the onboarding process, if that experience is not great, it has a lasting impact. I will tell you that I supported a SVP, and I won't be long with this story, Monique. I supported a senior vice president that had been with the organization for about 10 years. But every time we talked about onboarding, he went back to his first day and how horrible that onboarding experience was. And the thing that I would always say to him is, you know, it amazes me because every time you share this story with me, and it has been more than a dozen times, you talk about it as if it happened yesterday. And I think that is a very profound point, that how you onboard and how you assimilate and bring people into the organization, every step of that process matters. And there is an effect if we do not get it right every time. So that's very, very important that we do that. As it relates to what we are doing as an organization, well, I can speak more broadly than that, what other organizations are doing as it relates to the new hire training. They're meeting people where they are, right? Instead of having one mode or one medium, they're using a combination of digital, pre-COVID, in person. There's now a lot of interaction on platforms such as this, but making certain that employees during those first 90 days, as they start to get absorbed into the actual role, that they really understand what the strategic objectives of the organization is, and that they get the bigger picture of how what I do in my role aligns to what the company's strategic objective is, so that I can see what I do in my little circle. It has an impact on the revenue of the organization. It has an impact on how we meet our strategic objectives. And then the onboarding practices, we invest a lot of time. The little things such as, you know, who wants to show up the first day and not have their laptop available or their phone, or having someone meet and greet them and connect with them. So lots of work and lots of things that happen to ensure that it's a great experience, because it does really matter. Ari, anything you add?
Well, you really covered it on that one. No, you hit on some great points there. You know, and you talked about, you know, the 43% of people who said they were leaving because the role wasn't, you know, explained to them appropriately. And I think it's so key. And I made the point earlier about employers being sellers in this new dynamic. But the authenticity, the transparency, the clarity that you take into that salesmanship is so important, because at the end of the day, if what they're walking into day one as an employee does not mirror, you know, what was sold to them, they are going to quickly make that exit. And the truth of the matter is, you know, where in past times, you know, employers may have been able to get away with sort of, you know, selling all the good, right, the glitz and the glamour of the role, but leaving out some of those, you know, maybe tougher portions of the job. No longer does the employment market allow a company to get away with that. You know, employees are going to walk in day one, if they're not seeing a mirror image of what they were told, what they were sold during that interview experience. They have every opportunity to walk out and have a million other, you know, job opportunities at their feet. So it's so critical that that authenticity is there, that you're transparent, you know, and that you really do live up to all the things that you promised. And it just is a key component to an effective hiring strategy and effective retention strategy. So I think you nailed it there.
Thank you both. You make such excellent points. And Quentin, thank you for sharing that experience with a leader that you work for. Speaking of experiences, how do organizations create or develop experiences for new and existing employees to include customized education, collaborative partnerships, and really engaging speakers like yourselves. How do we make that happen?
So first things first, I will say this. It is critical that from the top down, you are promoting a culture that gives the leaders the ability and the expectation that they should give their employees space and time to focus on development. Expecting individuals to spend their free time, their time outside of work, as the time that is going to be focused on their development isn't going to work. You've got to give them that space. You've got to give them that time. And what they're going to see then is that it's not only the investment that you're making in a program or in a training content or things like that, but it's the investment you're willing to make in providing them that time, that space, that ability to develop themselves. And looking more at sort of what opportunities exist, I think we've really gone away from just having the standard stereotypical programmatic approach to development, right? And that's a sort of an antiquated approach that I think everybody has been through at some point in their career, right? We've got to develop this skill set with Ari. Okay, we're going to send them to this program, or we're going to send them to this executive leadership program, this executive education program, or, whatever the case might be. And not to say that those programs don't carry an immense amount of value, but they aren't the right answer. They aren't the right development tactic for every individual and every employee's need. So I think really creating a diverse and dynamic set of opportunities for development for employees is an important facet. And some of the things to think about are, third-party offerings, partnerships with organizations like, HBR, with LinkedIn Learning, that provide just libraries of content that your employees can access. I think, easy access is key. So on-demand content that allows them to not be locked into the rigors of someone else's schedule, but allows them to build learning and development into their schedule as it's appropriate and as it's convenient for them. The other thing I think also from an easy access standpoint, and something that we've done, is really trying to provide them with guidance on where their development opportunities may be, or where they may want to look for development, but doing so in an on-demand fashion. And so, one of the things that we've done at Comcast is we've moved to an AI-powered tool that actually will provide recommendations on training, recommendations on job openings internally, recommendations on people that they may want to network with based on not only their background, their experience, but things that they've entered in as skill sets that they want to develop, things that they've entered in as career interests for their future. And then again, using artificial intelligence to power a tool that provides them recommendations for training that are coming directly to them, and then access to that training, recommendations for people to network with within the organization that may be able to provide them exposure opportunities. Exposure opportunities is a big one. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot today is, agile talent. And one of my catchphrases is agility is the new talent currency. And it's not just about being good at what you do. It's about where your skill sets can carry value within the organization across a myriad of different functions or channels. And so exposure opportunities are a great way for people to gain experience without being in a role. So think project elements, and getting involved in different projects. Think about, initiatives, maybe with different partners of the organization. We've instituted, a gig economy at Comcast and a gig program, right, where, I can go on as a business leader and enter a gig and allow people from outside of my organization, from outside of my function that may have an interest in being involved to sign up for the gig. And then what that does is, one, creates an exposure opportunity for them, But what it does for me also as a business leader is it gives me diverse lenses, diverse experiences that are coming in to support initiatives that I'm working on in my business that are going to allow me to be more innovative and are going to allow me to be more successful with those initiatives. So those are some of the things that I think, companies can really be thinking through as they're just, pondering how to build and structure the right development experiences and opportunities for their employees. Quentin, any thoughts?
You have covered that extremely well. As you were speaking, though, and you talked about AI, that has been a tremendous uplift in many organizations to exactly what you said. Whereas there's not a top-down prescriptive development plan that someone is doing for you. You in our instance, you create a career profile, and then the intelligent systems, the artificial intelligence creates that learning journey for you, and you can select and choose those things to really advance your career. The other thing that came to mind as you spoke that I think, not I think, but we're getting extremely great reviews on is we launched Executive Connect just maybe a quarter ago. And Executive Connect, it gives all employees, not just the top talent, right, that were really selected for those prestigious university development programs, but it gives all employees access to take courses at these Ivy League prestigious universities all across the country. And we have had a significant part of our employee population participate in those classes and come back and just share their learnings. We've made some fun out of it where teams are doing those programs in cohorts as well. But those are that customization, Monique, that you asked about, that needs to happen to ensure that you are aligning these developmental experiences. And I love that you use the word experiences and not development programs, because they really need to be experiences that really help employees build that muscle so that they're prepared for their next opportunity.
Quentin and Ari, you both touched on some great points. I love that term, talent currency. I had to write it down. So, and I'm sure everyone listening wrote that down. So that's great. Quentin, my next question is for you. Let's elaborate on the Exec Connect. So what tips do you have for new leaders looking to build a team during the reshuffle?
Yeah, so that question I can answer 1,000 ways, but I'm sure you wouldn't give me the time. So I'll narrow it down to this. Whether it's a new leader or it is a existing leader, but I think it's central for new leaders. If you want to build an A team and attract the right people and retain the right people, I'm going to say that you need to start here, because I mentioned before about employer brand and employee and the employee value proposition. You really need to start there and honestly assess if your company, your organization, your business unit is a place that people want to work. Like, what is the reputation of your organization as it relates to many of the things that we've talked about? Is your organization reviewed or believed to be one that really develops and invests in people? Is it one where people can bring their authentic selves to work? Is it one that leads human and allow people to have flexibility, but also an organization that helps people that recognizes their accomplishments and their contributions. So really assess within your own team, what's your employer brand in the marketplace? What's your reputation that relates to the interest that really matters to employees the most? I would also say that invest in the development of your leaders, because if you look at attrition data, and we're talking about the Great Resignation, people really leave leaders. They don't leave the organization, they leave leaders, right? So invest in the development of your leaders to make certain that your leader is building that dynamic culture that people want to be proud of, that they want to be attached to. Also, we already talked about providing learning and development opportunities, but make sure that is towards people across all levels. When Ari was talking about, those selected development opportunities, I'm happy to see that we as an organization, meaning Comcast, but also broadly across industries, are shifting away and taking on the mantra that everyone leads. So let's educate, let's develop everyone so that we can have that bench strength and build a highly competent and effective organization. And then the last thing that I would say is to build a team, treat people with respect. It is as simple as that. Treat people with respect and with dignity, and allow people to make mistakes and recover, and not let that be career ending or career defining. Those are just a couple of things that I would throw out there. Ari, what would you add to that list?
I love it. The only thing I would add and touch on is just to say, in this employment market and looking to build a team right now, think about diversity of thought, diversity of experience. I think, naturally and by default, a lot of times when we say, diversity, immediately people think gender, think ethnicity, think race, and what I would encourage as you're hiring is to think about diversity of thought and diversity of experience for a couple of different reasons. One, it's going to open you up to larger candidate pools and give you the best opportunity to hire the best talent for your organization. But two, what it's also going to do is round out your organization to have different levels of innovation than you've seen before, to have spirited discussion and different lenses on the business than you may have had before. That's really going to lead you to heightened levels of success.
That's awesome. You two have really hit the nail on the head with that question. According to SHRM, the Great Reshuffle is spilling over into management, and they are 2 times as more likely to quit than an individual contributor. What can organizations do to retain top leaders?
It's a great question, Monique. And, people leaders have faced a specifically tough burden throughout the pandemic. They were forced to become health and safety enforcers. They adjusted styles and schedules to match various working environments and needs of their team members. They were rightfully asked to put an added premium on supporting their team's mental health. And on top of that, they dealt with a revolving door of resignations and the extra work that came with it. So all things considered, it's not surprising that some leaders are considering changes in their careers. I think what's key to retaining top leadership, and you can look at the reasons, that leaders have decided to leave organizations. Number one being the lack of career development. People need to see a future, and sometimes it's just about knowing that you see a future for them. I can't tell you how many instances I've seen in my career of individuals who decided to leave an organization, and as they were leaving and the organization was making a plea for them to stay, right, they said, well, we've got these plans for you, or you're on this succession plan. But the employee was never aware of that. just making them aware that you see them that way, that you have that plan for them, can aid in retaining them. Making that investment in their development, and ensuring that you've got them, networked appropriately, that you're giving them the right opportunities for exposure. Sponsorship is massive. Getting sponsors for your top leaders is a huge factor in retention. And then ensuring that your executive level leadership and your top level leadership is showing a true, authentic appreciation for everything that these leaders do, because they do a ton. So those are the things that I think organizations can really focus on in trying to retain their top leaders today.
There's probably not much I can add to that, because that's perfectly aligned with what I would say. I would just add that if an employer waits until the employee puts in their notification to leave to try to save them, you're already too late. You really need to make certain that you are doing stay interviews and you are anchoring your talent prior to there being some triggering reason that employees start to leave. So really connecting them, as Ari mentioned, with senior leaders. Make certain that you expose them to the organization, but you really invest time in understanding what is it that they want and that they need, and that you run through troops to make certain that you create that environment for them to stay.
Excellent. I have no doubt that as we wrap up the program, what will stick with folks is respect, diversity in thought, and experience. But my last question for you is about employer demand for workers. It remains high, and is fueling the trend for the great reshuffle. Is there an end in sight?
So the answer is yes. But the greater question is when. Unemployment is under 4%. Federal Reserve, they've raised interest rates. There are talks about a possible recession in 2023. There's a war in Ukraine. But the demand for employers, for employees, you're right, it remains high. So there are many factors that will drive the trend in any direction, but it's absolutely secondary. When you get as old as I am, you know that life is cyclical. Things go in circles, but it always comes back. As I say, it's an employee market, and there's a high expectation if they're not getting what they need, but they'll move on. But companies will weather this storm, and investing in their employer brand and the employee value proposition will weather through this.
Yeah, I agree. I think we will see some stabilization of the employment market. I think we'll see things different than they are today, but let me not forget to mention that there are permanent ramifications to what we've been through when it comes to the employment market, and when it comes to hiring and employee retention. There are permanent ramifications that are not going to change. They are permanent ramifications. And so things like employees and wanting flexibility, things like culture being an important tenet for people in choosing an employer, and an employer that aligns with their ethos. Things like an expectation of heightened development. Things like continuing to take a seller's mentality into the hiring process. Those are permanent changes that I don't see going away. But I do think, obviously, that the market will stabilize. As Quentin said, the greater question is when. For my sanity, I hope soon. But if I had a crystal ball, I'd be selling that information to every economist under the sun. So we don't know how long it will be, but certainly I think we'll see stabilization.
Well, gentlemen, thank you both. I'm going to call out to Magda to see if we have any questions from the audience.
We certainly do. The first question I have is, Has return to office policies contributing to this trend line? And if so, how much, especially after 1 or 2 years remote work during the pandemic?
So I'll take that. If I understand the question, I would say that to the way that Ari so eloquently phrased it, there are ramifications that will not change. And a flexible and hybrid work environment is one of those things. Companies are broadly understanding that flexibility for employees, it is premier, and that employees have made it clear that as part of we've seen it with new hires, as part of my orientation or my consideration rather for your company, I want to know if you have a flexible environment. And so we have certainly, I continue to call it work human, invested and make those changes within our organization so that we could create that flexible environment so that employees can give 100+% at work, but also have that balance as we go forward in this new dynamic.
Okay. Next question is, it seems that almost every job you see now across the country offers a remote option. Is Comcast at a disadvantage in having a less flexible approach?
Ari, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I think saying almost every is a bit of an overgeneralization, but certainly what we have seen is an increase in the prevalence of remote work and remote opportunities. And Comcast is in no way, shape, or form not a part of that. There are many opportunities, if you look across the spectrum at Comcast, that are offered in remote fashion and in virtual. And it's really selecting the jobs where that's appropriate, where that makes sense, where that allows the business to operate with the levels of success that we need it to. I think the other thing that's important, and where I think we've really shined in our flexible work environments, is really finding moments that matter to have people in the office. There's no sense having someone in the office just to sit on Teams calls all day in front of their computer. So really, as leaders, trying to design constructs for our employees that, one, are very flexible and allow them to customize their schedules to a point. But two, that if we're asking them to be in the office, it's because there's a value in doing so. So there's a large scale meeting that we want them to be at, or there are business partners that we want them interacting with that are in the office. Different things like that. So I think it's really just selecting those moments that matter to be in the office. But also, I think flexibility goes beyond just the virtual, in office, out of office piece, right? I think it also goes to being flexible in a schedule that works for different individuals. So when I think about that, what I mean is, maybe I've now adapted to taking my children to school every morning, so I can no longer be in the office by 8:30, and 10:30 is the time that I'm coming in. It's easier for me to be in the office from 10:30 to 4 most days that I'm in the office. That's okay. That's part of the flexibility. It's not, the 8:30 to 5:30 clock in, clock out mentality of ages ago. It's allowing people to work a schedule, whether it's in office or out of office, that really accommodates for the other things that are important in their life. I have many employees on my team that shut down earlier in the afternoon because they want to go pick their children up from school, and then they have them at home and they want to spend that time. But for them, it's easier to log on later at night after their children go to bed to answer emails or to take care of it. And that works for them. That's the schedule and the times that are convenient for them to be working. And I, as a leader, need to be comfortable with that flexibility, as long as it doesn't impede the needs of the business and their ability to support those.
Thank you, Ari. I just want to do a time check because these gentlemen are the most passionate And I know they would stay here and answer all your questions, but I really want to be mindful of their time and yours. Magda, do we have other questions?
There are two other questions. Well, there's three other questions. One is specific about Executive Connect, which we can probably connect with this person offline. But there are two or three other questions here. Do you want to just hear them quick and then decide you can answer them? Or okay. The first one is, in your opinion, which are the top 3 skills leaders need to acquire or strengthen in this new environment? For example, flexible working policies, digital teams, etc. The second is, do you want me to read them all at one time and then you can answer what you can answer? Okay, I just want to make sure. How must a company's internal growth mindset shift in order to make room or promote within to allow growth for the organization? Oh, I counted wrong. It's just those two.
I'll tell you what, I'll take the first one. When you talked about skill sets that leaders need in this new world, I think certainly empathy is one that is top of mind right now. You know, again, people have been through a lot over the last couple of years. People's lives have changed, people's priorities have changed, and the ability to show empathy for individuals in their situations, I think, is a key component to successful leadership. Communication skills. You know, we're now in a hybrid environment, flexible environment. Some of our employees are fully virtual. That being said, we still need the ability to communicate and connect with them. And as leaders, we need to figure out how to have those enhanced communication skills that can go beyond just a face-to-face interaction and can properly be portrayed across digital platforms. So I think communication is key. And then the last thing I would say is that flexibility and understanding. I think great leaders today are going to need to be flexible in the way they approach everything, whether that's the interview process, whether that is the profiles for candidates that they're looking for, and really thinking about the diversity of thought and experience that they may be able to find by expanding the profile for people that they're looking to hire for their teams, or just, you know, the simplest flexibility in the expectations of working environment for their team members. So, you know, empathy, flexibility, and communication, I think, are those top 3 skills for me.
Yeah, the one thing that I would add to that is we just walked all of our leaders. I'm very happy to say we had 93% participation through the Ken Blanchard situational leadership model. And what that model does, it really helps leaders not overuse their most common leadership style. So it gives a model of 4 distinct leadership styles: delegating, supporting, coaching, and directing. And all of us as leaders, we have one that we are most accustomed and comfortable with. However, that's not matched with what the employee needs. So this model matches the appropriate coaching style to where the employee is. That's such a critical, important development area for leaders across the spectrum, whether it's Comcast or whatever organization you're working for, that you adjust your leadership style so that you can do what leaders' responsibility is, which is to tap in and help people maximize their potential. And that second question you would need to say again if there's time to answer.
Sure. The second question was, how must a company's internal growth mindset shift in order to make room or promote within to allow growth for organizations?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm fully understanding the question, but I will answer it to what I think is being asked. If an organization's greatest asset is its people. So you've got to develop your people. You've got to develop the culture, and I know I'm overusing it, but I'm passionate about it. You got to develop the employee value proposition so that it is aligned with the organization's strategic objectives. You focus on those things, and it will shift the organization in the right direction to have that internal growth and promotion opportunities for people.
Thank you, Quentin. Well, this was a very informative session. I don't think we could have imagined we would have ran over, but thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for the great questions. I want to give a special thanks to Quentin Soleil and Aria Lara for really joining in and really just being authentic and sharing, their insights and wisdom with NAMIC Philadelphia, Florida, and friends of those organizations. Thanks everyone for your attendance today. Dwayne, would you like to close with a few words?
Absolutely. Thank you, Monique, for that. And I want to echo your sentiments. This was a wonderful event, very robust, dynamic conversation. I would like to just bring to everyone's attention, NAMIC Philadelphia will be having a few upcoming events. We are going to have a general body meeting in June, so be on the lookout for that. We're going to have the return of our summer soiree here in Philly. We're going to be back in person. We're going to try to see you guys again and have the ability to, in an outdoor safe situation, barring obviously numbers, try to get back into a little bit of seeing each other and engaging in our natural networking state. So be on the lookout for that, as well as we're going to be having an event. It's going to be centered around climate control and diversity within the climate control sphere. So we're going to have some leading experts. We're going to have a robust panel discussion that also will be coming this summer. So just some things to put on to whet your appetite, to keep you guys engaged. And I know that Florida chapter is working on some amazing things. I know I've talked to Monique behind the scenes. So those, keep your eyes out for both of that. And again, we will be offering these things across chapters. So please, whether you sit in Philadelphia, you're in Atlanta, Detroit, California, please make sure to join and share and engage as we try to develop those great leaders for the next generation that seem to be in great demand apparently. So let's get ourselves ready, because those positions will be open and we need to be making sure that we're at the forefront of that movement. I want to thank you all. Have a great day. Have a great evening. Stay safe, stay blessed, and have a good night.
Night.